We're going live. Welcome to one and all. Those of you in person, thank you for joining us. There's been a few apologies this evening. Those of you online, I'm about to welcome you once I see my screen again. Just give me a second.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hello. Okay. There we go. All right, we're going to start. Okay. Right, I'm going to put myself on spotlight here. But hello, Shmuley. Hello, Daryl. Thanks for joining. There we go. Okay. We are talking to you from the elk hall with the generator on. God has blessed us with the generator. That's the perspective. God gave us the tools with which to deal with challenges. You think those living in first world countries don't have challenges? They've also got challenges. Everyone has to deal with their own challenges. 12a7. It's a new Mishnah. And I think, Ivan, you spoke about this last time, about the tree in one property and the branch in another property. Okay, that's what we're going to deal with now. Hello, Kevin. Good evening. Okay, Erev Tov. We're talking about a case because once the person who goes to exile leaves exile, he is now vulnerable to the hands of the Redeemer, the Avenger of the family member. That's the rule. The moment he leaves the city of refuge, Torah says you may or you must, depending on the opinion, you may or you must kill him. Now, what happens if he's found in a tree that's partially in and partially out? This is why they say the Yidden have the Yiddish cup. Because even such a question is like, is it really worthwhile debating this? The answer is yes, it's worthwhile debating this because it makes your mind sharper. Number one. Number two is it shows you how detailed God's mind is. And when God writes a mitzvah in the Torah, right, if he leaves the city of refuge, the avenger can avenge his blood and kill him. What did God have in mind when he said that? Pages and pages of written oral tradition is what Hashem had in mind. It says the Gemara, the Mishnah on top. You have a tree that is standing inside the tchum. Tchum means the perimeter, the boundary of the city of refuge. Okay? But the branches are leaning outside of the city. So now you're not sure what the identity or the definition of this tree is. Another case. Or the tree itself was standing, meaning the trunk was standing outside of the tchum. But the branches are leaning inside the tchum. So let's go another way around. What's the din? The din is akol hoylech achar hanof. You go by the branches. Wherever the branches are, that's what dictates the identity of the tree. Yeah. His responsibility. If you cut off his branches. Okay, so interesting. So that's opposite, right? So Kevin is just for those of you on the screen. Kevin's sharing with us a proper, a real case of a branch and a trunk. Civil law may say that you go after the trunk. Here the Mishnah is saying that it's all the questions like this. Questions like this. I would say, what is the purpose of the tree? Let's see, you can ask. Right? So then the branches are most important. That's the famous debate. What's more important, the roots or the branches? So you go after which one? Irrelevant to where the roots are.
You talk about when you go to the cemetery, the trees over the graves, and then the trees, other branches over the
street. Crying in Can't Walk.
So now it's a question: if you some of the trees, you know what I mean? You've got some branches over.
Yes, I'm not. Because so there, it's slightly different because there, you're actually not analyzing the tree, you're actually worried about a tent, ohel. So a tree creates an ohel. No, because here the question is, not the ohel, here the question is, where is he sitting? Is he sitting in the branch or is he sitting on the trunk?
Or the
the exile, it's an exilee, I don't know. The article keeps calling him the exile. Can't be called the exile. The exilee, the guy who's supposed to be going to exile. So the question is he sitting in the branch or is he sitting on the tree? But this could be really a theoretical, philosophical question. What's the most important part? So your civil law will say you go by where the trunk is, and the man with the trunk is the owner, and therefore, as you said, you cut down the branches, you got to offer him the wood. But Torah is asking deeper than that. Torah is asking which one is more important. By the way, it's the same debate as Torah or mitzvahs. Which one's more important? Because you could say that Torah is more important, because without Torah, you won't know mitzvah. But then you'll say, but mitzvah is most important, because the whole reason you learn Torah is in order to do. So the Gemara debates that. What's more important, Talmud Torah or a mitzvah? Okay, safety over here. What's more important, the roots of the tree with the trunk or the branches? Anyway, it's an interesting debate. So here we're paskening that you go via the branches. Meaning, if the branches are in the tchum, the branches are within. So even if he's clinging to the trunk that's sitting outside the boundary, he's good. You can't touch him because you go via the branch and the branch is in. So then the trunk's considered in. Okay? Or once again, or vice versa, if the branches are outside the tchum, but the trunk is inside the tchum, doesn't help him. Doesn't help him to hold on to the trunk because you go via the branch.
If he's escaping to the refuge, he wouldn't be hanging out on the outskirts. You want to be within the city, so no one wouldn't get a question.
Well, first of all, maybe he made a mistake. Yeah, I would say that. To Lewis's point, I think your point is quite a powerful one, and that is it all goes via me. Like I'm the next generation, which is quite a. Have you seen yet Rabbi Sax's? They've launched a new website for Rabbi Sax's website, rabbisachs.org, in honor of his yahrzeit, which is our birthday.
Yes.
74th. It would have been his 74th birthday. Oh, Chaval Avda Avdin. We lost someone very young. So they launched a new website in honor of his birthday. And they also launched a new digital video, those whiteboard digital videos which he created quite a couple of times. It's his narration, and there's got like picture drawings. Anyway, it's the famous story that he describes of walking into a library. I've read this in one of his essays. Walking into a library and seeing your surname on a library book. Right? You're seeing many different surnames of families along the library book. You can go watch it on the website. And suddenly you notice it shows in color, it shows a purple book and it says Sachs on it. And he pulls out the Sachs book. He starts reading his family history. This Zayda and that Zayda and this family and that family. And as he's going through the book, he comes to an empty page. And he realizes that it stopped just after his parents' page. The book stopped, and then there's an empty page there. And he realized that the next page has to be filled up by him, because he's going to continue on the legacy of the previous generations. Anyway, it's a powerful analogy. And then he says, and that's the point of Torah learning, is that what do? We then give the book to the next generation. We say to the next generation, here's your book with an empty page, fill it up. And once you fill it up, then pass it on to the next generation. They too should do the same. Very powerful. So I like your anecdote to say it wasn't halachic, it was more hypothetical or idealistic. And that is the branches are the ikar, because at the end of the day, who's going to take the roots onwards is going to be the branch. Wherever I'm going to be is where my Zayd is going to be. Right? And wherever my grandchildren are going to be, that's where I'm going to be. That's the cycle of life. Yeah. No. No. I'll tell you why we're referring to the trunk, because we're saying even if. So let's discuss the two scenarios again. If the branches are in the tchum, to the inside the city, then he's always considered inside the city, even if he hung on to the trunk, which is outside the city. And vice versa. If the branches are outside, then the tree is always considered outside. Even if he held on to the trunk, which is inside, it's still considered outside.
There's branches that are some inside and some outside.
Then the same as well. Then the same as well. Exactly. Then the same as well. Yeah. You can't follow the branch. Yes, that's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. Because you have to follow the branch. Well, let's see. So it's not so simple. That's the psach of the Mishnah. That's the psach of the Mishnah. Let's now see what the Gemara says. There are many, but let's ask a contradiction. And let's see from another Mishnah. Another Mishnah will say something a little bit different to this. In Mini it says, Ilan sho'oimed bifnim, you have a tree that's standing inside the walls of Yerushalayim. What's this talking about now? It's talking about now the fruits of Meiser Sheni. Meiser Sheni is fruits which you have to take to Yerushalayim to eat. So there are different types of Meiser, different types of tithing. One type of tithe goes to the Levi. One type of tithe, not every year you do all three. It's spread out across a 6-year cycle. One type of tithe you give to the Levi. One type of tithe you give to the poor man. And another type of tithe is called Ma'aser Sheni, where you're obligated to eat it in Yerushalayim. Okay? That's the tithe. So here we're talking about Ma'aser Sheni. What's the point of eating in Yerushalayim? The fact that you eat your fruit in Yerushalayim means you're elevating all your produce to Yerushalayim standard. So whatever I have back at home also becomes holy. It's like tzedakah, right? What are the Svarim right about tzedakah? When you give tzedakah, what tzedakah does, it doesn't only elevate the money that you gave, but the money you gave becomes a mitzvah. But in actual fact, all the money I earned, even the percentage which I keep for myself, becomes holy as a result of the tzedakah. That's the mitzvah of tzedakah. And tzedakah elevates the rest of it. It's the representative of the rest of it. That's right. Same thing. Same thing. So that will then elevate the rest of your produce. So now you got a question like this: a tree is sitting inside the wall of Yerushalayim. The noite lachutz, and the branches are leaning outside, or vice versa. If the tree is outside, the noite lifnim, and the branches are leaning inside. Okay, so same scenario as we just painted earlier, but a different din. We spoke about Arei Miklat, city of refuge. This is talking about Ma'aser Sheni. We have to understand there's two different cases. What's the halacha in this case? Different, obviously, to the way we know it. It says, Mikeneged achayme b'lifnim, kelifnim. Whatever is from the wall inwards is inwards. You don't go, right? That's what we're saying. You don't go via the branch or via the trunk. It's not either or. It's whatever is inside the boundary line is considered within the boundary line. And whatever is in the wall outward, And if it's from the wall and outward, it's treated as outward. So that makes more sense, no? City of refuge. Oh, that's what we're asking. That's what we're asking. So therefore, if a person's sitting on the tree let me just explain the din here. If you're sitting on the tree within the boundary, then you can eat of the fruit you can eat of the fruit of the tree. Why? Because within Yerushalayim. He writes, yeah, from the wall and outward. The question will be what happens directly on top of the wall. And I'm not sure. No man's land. Let's say it's a thick, Yerushalayim wall is a thick wall. Don't know what we say there. But the point is, anything with if I'm sitting on the tree and the tree has fruit and it's inside, and this is the year of Ma'aser Sheni, right? And I'm within the wall, I can pluck off the tree and eat it there. But if you're sitting on the tree, on a part of the tree, whether it's the trunk or the branch or whatever it may be, outside of the wall, you can't touch it.
You can take it into this thing.
You can remove it and then come into the boundary and then, yeah, exactly. But we're talking about a case where you want to eat it from off the tree. You're sitting in the tree.
What you're saying is that you're sitting inside Jerusalem. You climb off the tree.
Yeah.
You only take food from.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Exactly what we're saying. Which, according to that, it's contradictory to what we just mentioned on the city of refuge. Because city of refuge just seems like you go via this or that. This Mishnah seems to say, no, you go via the wall. Whatever's in the wall. It actually makes sense. In other words, we're not getting into the philosophical question of branches versus roots. No, that's not the discussion. The wall is the deciding factor.
So you're sitting on the tree and reach over for the fruit of the branches outside the city, you eat that. That's not my session.
It's not. No. It is Ma'aser Sheni. You're eating it in the wrong place.
Like you eat outside the city.
No, you have to go pluck it and bring it in.
Okay. No, but if the branches being outside,
Okay. You mentioned that as well. Okay, so right. I must agree to that point. If you pluck the fruit off and you bring it into where you're sitting, that means you climb across the tree, across the branch, pluck the fruit off, climb back to where you were sitting originally, then you'll be okay. Yeah, we're talking about a case where you're sitting in the tree, right? That's valid. That's a valid point. Yeah, right. The wall is the deciding factor. Okay, so let's see an answer to this. As he writes, the Mishnah rules that all parts of a tree are classified according to their actual location. The trunk does not follow the branches, nor does the branches follow the trunk. It seems to contradict the ruling of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, you can't compare. Because we're discussing two different cases. One is a city of refuge called Ir Miklat. Let's start using the Hebrew terminology. Ir Miklat. And the other is Ma'aser Sheni. And the two are unrelated. How do we see? Ma'aser are Miklat Karamis. Are you asking from Ma'aser onto Ir Miklat? That's your question. Ma'aser b'choymer tolerachamon. The case of the Ma'aser regarding the wall is dependent. The case of the Ma'aser is dependent on the wall. The deciding factor is the wall. Therefore, you go via the wall. The status of the tree and where the tree is sitting is irrelevant. The wall is what decides whether one is Ma'aser Sheni, whether one can eat Ma'aser Sheni or not. Over the next column, this is 12a7, yeah? Are Miklat Bedira Tolerachamana. But the city of refuge, how do you define the city of refuge? You define it by one's dwelling. According to one's dwelling. The tree is judged by the usability as a dwelling. So the Ir Miklat is where you're dwelling, where you live. The Yerushalayim is defined by the wall. So therefore, it's two completely different issues. When it comes to Yerushalayim, and you need to decide what is Yerushalayim, what's not Yerushalayim, the wall will define what is and what isn't Yerushalayim, irrelevant to what the tree is doing or not doing. But if we're talking about if we're talking about city of refuge, and the city of refuge is talking about dira, and dira means dwelling or living, right? Well, then I need to decide what is considered living. Is the branch considered living, or is the trunk considered living? Right? So therefore, it's not so much am I in the boundary or out the boundary when it comes to city of refuge. It's not so much am I in the boundary or out the boundary. The question is, am I living in the city or am I not living in the city? The wall's not going to tell me that. The wall's not going to tell me am I in the city or I'm not in the city. What's going to tell me that is what's considered dwelling. Because of this. So the answer is, and therefore, to come to answer this point, to answer the question that Ivan was asking, Benofoi mitdar lei. In the branches, one can dwell. You can live in branches. We're looking for dwelling, right? We're looking for living. In branches, you can live. But on the branch, one cannot dwell. So on the trunk, you can't dwell. So because you can't live in the trunk, how can you define living by a trunk? We need to define living. We're not defining boundaries now. That's not the purpose now, to define boundaries. We're defining living. So which part of the tree is living? The branches are the living. So wherever the branches are going to be, that's going to be the extension of the city of refuge. And because the status of a tree is dependent on the branches, because the status of the tree is dependent on the branches, everything follows the branches. If he's sitting on the outside?
Yes, you said now that the branches of the status of the tree. Therefore, if you sit on the outside of the
No, because the branch is the dwelling place, and the branch is outside of the city. And because the branch and the dwelling place is outside the city, therefore it's outside. So the key deliverable of Yerushalayim is the boundary of Yerushalayim. And by the way, it's got nothing to do with living. Ma'aser Sheni has nothing to do with living. We don't care where you live. The fruits have to be within the border. That's the defining factor. When it comes to city of refuge, we want to know where you're living.
For the Aramaic, we spoke about the Tchum Shabbos. For the Ma'aser Sheni, are we also talking Tchum Shabbos? Do you mean literally?
No, wall of Yerushalayim.
The Tchum Shabbos doesn't
No,
come into.
I don't think so. All right. I don't think so.
This castle is a tree like an house.
That's right. But which part of the tree?
Yeah.
The branches specifically.
Got a tree house.
So it depends where the branches hang. The branches hang over the boundary of the city of refuge.
Then it's considered outside.
No.
If the branch hangs outside of the city of refuge,
It's outside.
it's outside.
If the inside, so if the branches hang inside, it's the opposite inside.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
No, so some of the branches hang inside and some of the branches hang outside. All of it is outside, irrespective of where the tree house is.
Or is it not like half that the branches hanging outside? Like is it not the whole tree? The one
That's the way it sounds. That if some of the branches are outside, then all the trees are outside.
Yes, if there's enough branches outside that he can live on, then the whole tree is considered outside.
Even if he's living on the part of the tree.
That's inside. Yeah, you'll still go by those main trees outside.
And what they're saying is that the tree's growing a bit by the border. He's living on this side, inside the city. But not-
Inside the city.
Yeah, on the branches this side. He needs to get in and out of his house, and he comes down with the trunk, which is on the outside, is still protected because he's dwelling.
Ah, very good. No, that's what it means. No, one second. No.
Yeah.
No.
The tree is regarded as dwelling located in the city of refuge. Therefore, even if the killer is on the trunk outside, the killer
Yes.
is protected.
Yeah, but not if he's walking out onto his
No, but if he's
house.
Well, he's got to get into his house somehow. So
No, he can't leave that branch.
But it says here, even if he is on the trunk, he's still protected.
Yeah, where's his house?
On the inside. He has the going up, branches going this way and this way, he's living here on this
Yes,
side.
that's correct.
But he has to get on, up and down, so he's got to come down the trunk. And the trunk happens to
Yes,
be on
yes,
the
that's
outside.
right, that's right.
So if he has to come,
That's correct.
if he has to come down the trunk and from the outside, he's still protected.
Yes.
But the house is on the inside.
But then it's even let's go to the trunk.
That's what I was trying to say. Is that once he lets go of that trunk, he's now a standing duck. Which in practical terms are like this. Let's say he's outside the city, whatever reason, for food, hunting, who knows, right? There's good cattle outside. He wants to hunt, not with an arrow. He wants to catch an animal and shecht it. That's it. I don't know. And then he sees the family member coming his way, right? Wanting to kill him. So the question is if he can jump onto the trunk, right? Once he holds onto the trunk, according to this case, he's good. It's like what's that game? Hide and seek, or you have to come back to base and knock 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on. So therefore, that's the initial answer. The initial answer is you can't compare Ari Miklat to the case of Ma'aser Sheni. Okay. Now let's go on. Another question. Bottom right hand column. Virami Meiser Ameiser. We're going to ask the question now of a Meiser case against the Meiser case. Because we just said now you can't compare Meiser to Ir Miklat. Okay, so you can't compare Meiser to Ir Miklat. So now what we'll do is we'll compare Meiser to Meiser. And then create a contradiction.
Even though now we can't.
So we're drifting away from this. Exactly. But once we're in the conversation, we're in the conversation. The other one is Tchum, and the other one is? Yes, but that's correct. Yes. Yeah. No, because yeah, it's a boundary. But the reason why I hesitated was because it's not so much about, you have to add on a detail. It's a dira, a dwelling within the tchum. Remember, we said the key element is where you're living. What's the living quarters look like? So it's living within the tchum. And one is eating within the wall. Not so much the dwelling part. Okay? So let's do now Meiser a Meiser. Rami Meiser a Meiser. And we're going to ask a question for Meiser a Meiser. Tanya, as we learn in a Brisa, Yerushalayim Haleich Acher Hanoif. In Yerushalayim, with regards to Meiser, you go via the location of the branch. Different to what we mentioned. Right? Yerushalayim, you go after the location of the branch. That's for Ma'aser Sheni. Bari Miklat, with the city of refuge over the page, Halech Acher Hanoif also. You also go according to the location of the branches. So, what are we seeing here in the Brisa? The Brisa is saying that whether it's the case of Ma'aser Sheni or whether it's the case of Ir Miklat, you'll always follow the Nof. You always go via the branch. This is a contradiction to our not to our Mishnah, to the statement that we brought earlier about Ma'aser Sheni. Because what did the statement say earlier about Ma'aser Sheni? You don't go via the branch. You go according to where it is, the wall. Yeah.
So long as some of the branches are in Jerusalem, then all the fruit is permissible to eat.
Yes. According to this. Yeah, as long as some of the branches are in Yerushalayim, then you can eat the fruits. Even if the trunk is outside. That's the contradiction. Now, last time we resolved it by saying that Maisa Sheni, the fruits, and Ir Miklat are different because there's different defining elements here. But this is both Maisa Sheni. We're trying to define what is the border. And now we're saying one source, the earlier source said the wall defines it. And this now says the branches define it. Where the branches positioned.
So yes, so how many some branches are inside and the trees inside?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, there's,
And that means, let's just take Evan's point a little further. If some of the branches are inside, then all the branches are considered inside, even parts of the branch that are past the wall. That's a contradiction to what we're discussing. Okay, so that's right. That's how you do it. That's how you do it, exactly. Okay, so now. Okay, so now says the Gemara, because of this contradiction, we need to change track a little bit. And the Gemara is actually going to reassess this whole thing. Because we thought we had the answer right. But now that we've been shown that there's a contradiction within Meiser itself, then my whole premise falls away. And when my premise falls away, I basically have to rebuild again. That's what we're saying. So how do we rebuild? So Amar Rav Kahana, right hand column. Excuse me. Okay, Amar Rav Kahana. Lo kashya. It's not a question. Ha Rabbi Yehuda. Ha Rabbanan. That's the answer. The answer is you have to understand what the machloket of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan is. And once you understand what the machloket of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan is, once you understand what the machloket of Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda is, you'll then be able to understand why there's two different sources. If we have the right mindset, we'll even see that this will answer the original question against our Mishnah. Okay, so in other words, being introduced to a machloket of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan is going to enlighten us and educate us to such an extent that the whole picture is going to make sense now. We're not going to have a problem anymore. Because once we establish a machloket, right, once we establish a machloket, then it's not a problem at all. Okay? Let's see what the machloket is. Amar Rav Kahana lo kasha ha Rabbi Yehuda abar Rabbanan. This our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda, which means you go via the branches. The Harabanan and this Mishnah, which classifies each part of a tree according to its location, that represents the opinion of Rabbanan. Let's learn. The time is we learn in the Brisa over the page. 12b1. So B1. 1 second. Okay. So says the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda says a completely different din. The Ma'ara, if we're talking about a cave now, okay, so now a cave is a whole new scenario. Even though we did discuss something a few weeks ago about an underground cave, right? Tunnels. Oh, right, that was tunnels. Okay. Yeah. We said it's not. We said you're still stable. We said not to be there.
It's all part of the film.
It's all part of it. Okay. So he said like this. Look at the cave. The cave, hoylech acha pischa. with the cave, you follow the Pesach, the opening of the cave. Wherever the opening is, that's what defines the cave. Look at footnote number 1. There are the rules that a cave is classified according to the location of its opening. Accordingly, a cave that is entirely within the bounds of the city of Yerushalayim, but whose opening is outside, is regarded as being entirely outside. Therefore, one may not consume Ma'aser Sheni anywhere in its interior, even if you're inside the cave. But because your opening is outside of Yerushalayim, you can't eat it. But I'm in Yerushalayim, I don't care. Your opening is outside Yerushalayim. A cave that is located entirely outside of the city, but whose opening is inside, is regarded as being entirely inside. Therefore, one may not redeem Ma'aser Sheni anywhere in its interior. You mean exit in the city and out of the city? 2 exits. What would you say? If you have 2, you say which one's the main entrance?
It only has one main entrance. It only has one entrance, but there's 2 exits. It's only where the entrance is.
So that's where you came in from.
Do you not take like a more strict opinion and say that maybe you just shouldn't?
You should what?
Because there's a dart, then go on.
The Chumrah. Okay. This case in the cave? Yeah. Yeah.
Pain is outside, opening is inside. When it's inside, it also can't.
That's right.
Consume. Why can't you consume it where it comes inside?
No. You're talking about the last case? Then you can.
It's the same thing. So you're saying if the opening is outside.
No. Look at the end. One may not redeem Ma'aser Sheni anywhere in its interior. Okay, so it's interesting. He uses the word redeem, not eat. Which, why would he do that? Let's just look at it here for a second. He changes it. You see the word redeem? Yeah. You know why? Once you're in Yerushalayim, you can't redeem anymore. It's too late. Once you're in Yerushalayim, you can't redeem fruit in Yerushalayim. You can't redeem it. So you're going to have to eat it. The question is why we changed the terminology. But just to make sense for a second, I'll look at Rashi for a second. But you understand the difference here. The first one says, are you eating it, are you consuming it, or not consuming it? This one's saying that it's considered like Yerushalayim, therefore one may not redeem Ma'aser Sheni anywhere in the city. Why can't you redeem it? Because it's considered Yerushalayim. Why is it considered Yerushalayim? What is? Because the entrance is inside.
When you don't need to redeem.
Yeah, exactly.
Just see what you got to redeem.
Why do we? Rashi here? A second. He quotes Rashi here. Oh, but maybe Rashi for somewhere else. Okay, I'm not sure. No, and also doesn't say why he changes terminology. He's quoting Rashi. I wonder if it's Rashi here. The cave that is located entirely outside of the city, but whose opening is inside, is regarded as being entirely inside. Okay, with that we agree with, right? Therefore, one may not redeem Ma'aser Sheni anywhere in this interior. Why is he changing the terminology?
But maybe it's assuming that-
Oh, here, what's it? Yeah, I'm not sure. Don't know why we're changing terminology. Because can you eat the Ma'aser Sheni there? Why not? Can you eat the Ma'aser Sheni there? The opening is in Yerushalayim. The body of the cave is outside. Can you eat the Ma'aser Sheni there?
Master Sheni is something that you take to Jews.
Yeah.
So this is already in Jews. So you
You
can't
don't-
claim it as Master Sheni because it's already in Jerusalem. It's redeemers
To exchange.
It's not-
You don't need to worry about
The two choices, you redeem or exchange, depends where you are. So if you're interested, you can't then. I mean, a redeem or consume. So if you're in the outside, depends, it speaks to what you can do with it.
I understand, but I would imagine it's two ways.
Got the produce, okay, and you can't get it all, get the money, sell it, and you go to Jews and spend your money.
Right.
But if once you're with the produce, you can't sell it anymore, you can have it consumed.
Eat it itself.
That's it.
Okay.
So you can't, you put.
No, but let's clarify. Can you eat it in that scenario where the door is facing Yerushalayim, but the cave is not? Can you eat it? You can eat it. You can't redeem it.
If it's the other way around, we take the interest outside, you can. Yes.
Yes. Can you eat it?
No.
That's the point. That's the point. You can redeem it. You can't eat it. Okay, you understand that point? So it all goes via the door. Where's the door open to? Yeah, redeeming means exchanging the money value for it. Because let's say I'm going to get some water, but let's say it's too much. Let's say you got tons and tons of oranges. Tons of oranges. What do you do? Exchange orange for money, for tea, and the food you come with, you'll buy shawarmas and falafels with it. Yeah, I think by food. I think food only. I'm not. I don't know. I recall something about food specifically. So many shawarmas and many lafas and many falafels and ice creams and frozen yogurts. That's the mitzvah of Ma'aser Sheni.
I thought you had to buy produce.
Was that? Okay, let's go on here. I just want to read this paragraph with you. Rabbi Yehuda speaks with regards to Ma'aser Sheni. He classifies the entire tree according to the location of its branches. The rabbis dispute Rabbi Yehuda. They rule that each part of the tree is classified according to its own location. You see, there's a machloket tanaim as to whether to go via the branch versus the trunk or go via the location where you're at. Our Mishnah and the Mishnah in Ma'oros are in accord with the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah and the Mishnah in Ma'aser, are in accord with the view of Rabbi Yehuda. They therefore rule that with respect to the laws of the city of refuge and Ma'aser Sheni, we follow the location of the branches. Right. The Mishnah in Ma'aser Sheni is in accord with the view of the rabbis. Therefore rules that each part of a tree is classified according to its actual location. So that's how we're resolving the issue. The issue that we saw in the original Mishnayos, the conflicting places. Do we go via the branch versus the trunk, or do we go via the location of where you're at? Is actually a machloket of two Tanaim. And by telling us that, it calms us down. Because here we thought we're going Meshuggah. One source says this, one source says that. Do I follow this? Do I follow that? Ivan wants to know what the Psak Halacha is going to be. And the answer to the Gemara is saying it's actually two opinions. It's two Tanaim. Once you say it's two Tanaim, okay, I calm down. Because Tanaim can always have arguments. It's my interpretation that I can't, that has to be clear and consistent. That's my interpretation. But the rabbis and Rabbi Yehuda who argue, each Mishnah follows a different opinion. Oh, I'm not sure about that. Not sure if that's allowed. Okay, the next piece is not an easy piece. Let's see how we go. Can you say that again? If the woodchuck? Yeah. So if you get that, you can understand the Gemara coming up. Okay, now the Gemara has a question. In other words, the way we just settled, Rav Kahana, our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda, is a problem. In other words, maybe, what did Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda says, in the cave, follow the opening. So we said, that's the same as our Mishnah. Follow the branch. That was similarity. He said, follow the opening, and we said, fine, follow the branch. Okay. The Gemara says, Eimod deshamat le Rabbi Yehuda gabe ma'aseh l'chumra. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda was talking about that case only because of a stringency. In other words, I could question Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. And the entire tree is classified by the location of the branches only because of the stringency. Let's see what he means in the following paragraph, in the following column, right-hand column. Ikarei bechutz. If the trunk is outside the wall of Yerushalayim, but the branches are inside Yerushalayim, what do we say? You follow the branch, right? Because one who's sitting on the branch may not redeem Ma'aser Sheni because he's already in Yerushalayim. If he's already in Yerushalayim, he can't redeem Ma'aser Sheni. Note 5. Yes, look, it says over there, since Ma'aser Sheni may not be redeemed inside Yerushalayim. So it makes sense what he's saying, that once it's sitting on the branch in Yerushalayim, you can't redeem. You can't redeem anymore. You're already in Yerushalayim. And therefore, the Koroi Nami Lemati Parik. And therefore, if you're sitting on the trunk, if you're holding onto the trunk, but because the trunk is physically outside, it's like even though the trunk is physically outside, it's like it's connected to the city. That's a stringency. So right? Because what are we saying? That because it's part of the branch, it's in Yerushalayim, the whole trunk gets forbidden as well, gets prohibited as well. Or another way, let's read the next thing. Ikar b'fnim, we know these cases. The trunk is inside, the noifet mibachutz, and the branches are outside. So we classify that tree as being outside. Just like one who's on the branch may not eat. Why can't you eat? Because where's the branch? Outside, exactly. So therefore on the trunk as well, you can't eat without redeeming. This is also a stringency. Even though because the branch is inside, therefore the trunk is that too. So he says in the next paragraph, with regard to Ma'aser Sheni, then classifying the tree according to the location of his branches yields a restrictive, stringent ruling whether the branches are inside or outside Yerushalayim. So therefore, it makes sense, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. It makes sense that he's going to agree to that opinion of the branch. What about the other case of Miklat? This is more complicated. Let's go over the page. Now, in other words, what are we doing? We're saying like this: don't tell me that Rabbi Yehuda is the author of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda spoke specifically about Ma'aser Sheni. Why? Because he's stringent. He's always being stringent based on the branch. But what about the case of the city of refuge? There may not be any stringency here. And because there's no stringency, he may not agree. Let's see. Bishlama ikro b'chutz v'noifer b'fnim. What happens if the trunk was outside the city and the branches are inside? Fine. So you go by the branches because the branches are inside. And he says, for this leads to the following stringency. Just like you can't kill him if he's sitting in the branch. So therefore, you also can't kill him if he's holding onto the trunk. And even though the trunk is outside, that's the stringency. Even though the trunk is outside, no, it's considered as if it's really inside because of the branch. But here comes the problem. What happens if the trunk was inside? And the branch was outside. So just like the killer can kill him on the branch because the branch is sitting outside, so then on the trunk which is inside, you can also kill him. So he's saying like this: is that a stringency or a leniency? To be able to kill him, what are we saying? If he's on the trunk, what are we saying? If he's on the branch and the branch is going outwards, you can kill him. Right. So therefore, for the trunk as well, which is sitting inside, and he's hanging onto the branch, he's hanging onto the trunk, what do you say? You can kill him. Right. That's not a stringency. That's a leniency. He's allowing you to kill. So in other words, like this, Rabbi Yehuda, this is how we're challenging this question. Rabbi Yehuda, the rule of comparing a trunk to a branch, a trunk to a branch, is there to be machmir. That's the principle he's suggesting. Is there to be strict, not to be lenient. So when we compare a trunk to a branch, we're being strict. Okay? He gave examples. Let's just, for example, 1 second. He gave examples before. He said, that's why, by the way, we're using the terminology redeeming and eating. Let me explain this for a second. Eating and redeeming is very important here now because he wants to see where the stringency is. So when the branch, let's talk about fruit. Let's go back to fruit. We'll come back to the killer in a second. And we'll end this. Yeah. With fruit. When the branch is outside, okay, can he eat of that fruit? And the branch is outside. The branch is outside. He can't. The trunk is where? Inside. Can he eat of that fruit? On the trunk, or trunk and the fruits that are there? He can't. No, not the trunk. I'm talking about like this. If parts of the fruit are outside, right? And what about the fruits that are inside? No, you can't, because you go via the branches. If some of the branches are outside, then the whole tree is considered outside. By the way, that's his principle.
The principle was that if it says here, the branches are inside.
No, I'm discussing either one. Okay, fine. Let's say all the branches. No, but no. I'm saying there are some fruit that are reachable from inside. You have to say that. That's the scenario.
I've got a problem with the whole thing.
No, wait. I've got to finish this point about stringencies. 1 second. If part of the branch is outside, you can't touch that fruit. What about the rest of the tree that's inside? We're saying, according to him, you also can't, because you go via the branch, right? Is that a stringency? Sure it is. You're not allowing the trunk is growing in Yerushalayim. The fruits are coming into Yerushalayim. You can't touch it. Because we're being stringent on you because of the branches that are outside. Let's now show another level of stringency. What happens if the branch is inside? Wait. Huh? That's here he's saying like this. No, listen. The branch is inside. Yeah, it is the same way, but I want to show the stringency. Don't talk about eating now, because there's no stringency in eating. Because what are you going to say? No, wait. Before you go to your thoughts, how are you being, you're going to say that the same way. If the branches are in Yerushalayim, then whatever's outside, you can still eat it. Yeah, but there's no stringency there. Let me tell you where the stringency is. That scenario, the trunk is outside, but the branches are inside. Okay, you with me? Right. The fruits of the trunk, the fruits on top of the trunk, can you redeem them? So again? So can you redeem that which is outside? No. Because you can't redeem, now you see the terminology changed. Because you can't redeem that which is inside, you can eat it. Because you can't redeem that which is inside, you also can't redeem that which is outside, even though normally you're allowed to redeem that which is outside. But because part of it is inside and you can't redeem, therefore you also can't redeem what's outside too. So what I'm trying to show you is that Yehuda always uses this rule in finding stringencies, to be machmir. You follow the branch in order to be machmir. Either the eating is the machmir, that you can't eat it, or the redeeming is the machmir, that you can't redeem it. That's how he learns. So that all makes sense with regards to fruit. What about the city of refuge? The city of refuge, he's saying, there's no stringency. In one of the scenarios, there's no stringency. Which scenario? So he says, what happens if the branch is inside? Because remember, in the city of refuge, there's no concept of redeeming. By fruit, you got eating or redeeming. By city of refuge, you got one case. Can you kill him or you can't kill him? So when the branches are in the city, you can't touch him. What about if he's on the trunk outside? If the branches are inside, you can't touch it. What about if he's holding on to the trunk? Also can't touch it. That is a stringency. Hold on.
Location of the branches determines.
Yes. And that's a stringency because we're not letting him touch him. That's a stringency. You're being strict. You're not letting the Goel Adam touch him. That's called being strict. Why are you doing it? Because of the branches. Okay, that makes sense. Now comes the problematic scenario. What happens when the trunk is inside, but the branches are outside? You can't kill him. When he's holding on to the trunk, inside, you can kill him. That doesn't make sense. That's impossible.
No, that's it.
So there's one missing loop. There's one missing loop in Rabbi Yehuda's theory.
No, the location of the branch.
Exactly, but that's why we're saying that can't be the opinion. Our Mishnah cannot be going according to Rabbi. We just established there's two major Tanoim, two major opinions, and our Mishnah is going to one. I'm sorry, I'm keeping everyone a little bit longer here. Our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Yehuda, and the others go according to Rabbanan. We've just broken that principle, or we've shown that there's a gap in that, because Rabbi Yehuda's principle is you're always going to be strict because of this. If you're now allowing him to kill him while he's holding onto a trunk inside the city, that's not a stringency. That's a leniency. Therefore, our Mishnah can't necessarily be Rabbi Yehuda. And if our Mishnah can't be Rabbi Yehuda, right, then this whole conflict, this whole contradiction hits again. How do we resolve contradiction? By saying it's two different opinions. But now I'm telling you it's not that opinion. So if the opinion doesn't hold, then I got the contradiction again.
I'm going to put a sting in the words.
Okay. Oh, wait,
I still believe must according to the chart. I'll tell you why. Because a tree can live without a branch, the branch from the that's simple. Therefore, the trunk is important.
You're coming back to the original debate. I thought we settled that one already.
It's more important because, like I say, if you cut the branch of the trunk, it's your sort of survive, but without the trunk, but no branches.
Okay, the problem is like this. I'm going to come to you in a second, Ivan. The answer, we're going to have to continue the answer next time round. Or next time, one second. Next time is Purim. So in 2 weeks' time. We're going to have to hold our breath for 2 weeks before we come to answer this. Okay, I'll come back to, I'll speak to you, I'll speak to you in a point now. I'm going to